Hey, it's good to see everybody. I'm going to take my slide off for just a second and put my video on. All right, hopefully you me now. So, hey everyone, good to see all of you. It's been fun to check in with in the comments as we're getting started here. My name's Matt Miller. I'm the author of Ditch That Textbook, taught high school Spanish for more than 10 years. I've actually got a little slide to do my introduction and kind of jumped the gun, but hey, that's okay. So it's good to see some familiar faces and some new faces in the chat. I just saw in here a second ago that Kristen's here from Michigan. Looks like there's another Matt from Maine who got 7 inches of snow last night. Oh my goodness. It's supposed to be beyond time for snow, I think. Michelle's here from Melbourne, Australia. Awesome place. Very good. There's Catherine, who has been in on a couple of my videos recently. So yeah, loving to see all of you. Got someone saying, loving the tea, Matt. I am totally sporting the Perry on my shirt. I don't know if you saw Perry getting down with the music earlier, but he was in on it too. So anyway, so glad to have all of you here. We're going to have a bunch of cool stuff to talk about, specifically related to student-paced mode for remote learning. So I really think this is one of the heroes of the remote learning movement. You know, ever since we got started with this, you know, whether you've been doing it for a month or doing it for a few weeks or even longer than that, I know here in the United States, it's really been, you know, in the last several weeks or so, there have been a handful of things that have come across as really, really helpful. And I really am a big believer in student-paced mode because it does allow us to, you know, really interact with our students, but do it in sort of an asynchronous way where we don't all have to be there at the same time. It allows us to keep track of what they're doing, and it's really, really good. So I'm excited to get to share that with you during this webinar. So I'm going to keep the chat up and kind of keep an eye on it. Feel free to throw questions into the chat. And also, as we get going, if I talk about something and you have used it before, or if I talk about something and you can come up with a way that you could potentially use it, feel free to throw that in the chat too. Would love to see that. I love being able to pull some of your ideas and throw them into videos and webinars like that so that it's not just me. So I wanted to tell you about this too. This is exciting. You all like free stuff, right? If you like free stuff, say free in the chat. Here it comes. It's going to start populating in the chat. There they are. So if you like free stuff, and you do, I've heard someone say, what's a teacher's favorite prize? Free, of course. You're going to get a chance to win a free copy of my most recent book that I co-authored with Nate and Angie Ridgway called Don't Ditch That Tech, Differentiated Instruction in a Digital World. I've had several people tell me that especially right now this book is so relevant, and there's lots of very helpful takeaways that you can already go ahead and apply into your classes right now. So if you want to be in on it, then we need to see a tweet from you. So make sure that you tag me. I'm at jmattmiller. Make sure that you put in Pear Deck, at Pear Deck. Just make sure those go into your tweet and the Ditch Book hashtag. Those are 3 things. Jot them down. You know, write them on the back of your hand. You know, whatever you need to do, carve them into your desk so that you don't forget. I'll put this image back up at the end of our webinar one more time so that you get it. So feel free to tweet and that will enter you in the drawing. Joanne asks, is it available to purchase on Kindle? Yes, absolutely. Can we use something else other than Twitter? Sadly, I think this is just a Twitter giveaway. So heck, you could even just sign up for a quick Twitter account and do this as your very first tweet if you wanted to. So, okay, that being said, I also wanted to tell you, since you do like free things, here's something that I can give you for free. I've got these free ebooks available on my website that I thought I'd tell you about real quick before we get into this too much. there are these are just full of practical ideas you can start plugging into your classes right away, whether you're teaching remotely or later on when you go face-to-face again. We've got 101 practical ways to ditch that textbook. That's just like lots of ways to bring technology, creativity, innovation into the classroom, plug and play. Another one that's specifically focused on G Suite, and then we've got the 50 free templates for teachers. These are the ones where you can make a copy of a template either in Google Slides or in PowerPoint, and then just assign it to your students through your learning management system. So if this is something that you're interested in getting, please head off to ditchthattextbook.com/101. It'll ask you for your name and your email address. It'll send you those ebooks, and it'll also sign you up for my email newsletters where I'm sharing the same kinds of great stuff that you're going to be seeing on this webinar. Same kinds of stuff. So with that in mind, I did want to tell you that the slides for this presentation are available at ditchthattextbook.com/student-paced. So there's that. And then I've seen a couple of you asking about a recording of the webinar, and I'm seeing a comment in the chat saying we'll be sending a recording out to everyone who registered and joined on Monday. So that will be coming out. So with that all in mind, hey, how you doing? Good to meet you. My name's Matt. Again, like I told you, taught high school Spanish for more than 10 years. And, you know, most recently when I was in the classroom, I had a cart of Chromebooks. And sadly, that was before I knew about Pear Deck, because whenever I was using slides, they were all very static. There wasn't very much interaction in them whatsoever. And so we're going to be talking about how we can transform those slides during this webinar. So this is what we're going to be doing. This is what you're going to get. Number one, I'm going to demonstrate what Pear Deck Student-Paced Mode is, so that you have an idea of basically what it does and how you can use it. Number two, and I found that this is the most helpful stuff when it comes to a webinar like this, is not so much the nuts and bolts of how it works, but how can you actually use it for remote learning? We're going to talk about ideas. We're going to talk about implementation. And this is where I'm going to really need to lean on you. I'm going to be sharing some ideas and some thoughts about how we can use student-paced mode, but I'm going to keep my eye on the chat during that part, and I'm going to be throwing out things that all of you suggest also. And then, of course, number three, we're going to answer your questions. Again, one more time, there's that list I just saw, or that link, ditchthattextbook.com/student-paced is where you can find the slides. So with that in mind, let's dive right into the first part. Oh, and please share. This is what I was just saying earlier. Please share your ideas. Please share your questions. Please interact. That's always good, so that I can see what you've got to say and also throw in some of your ideas. Okay, I'm going to give you the quick, in a nutshell version of what Pear Deck is. If you're not familiar with Pear Deck, don't worry, this is going to go really, really fast, okay? So here's basically what Pear Deck is. This is just my explanation, not something that Pear Deck gave me. This is just Matt's version of describing it. So basically what Pear Deck will do is it will let you take your presentation slides and it will make them interactive. And so students are able to get those slides on their screen, and they show up on the screen, and then as you flip through your slides, they're displayed to the students. This is if you're using it face-to-face in a traditional classroom format. And then whenever you put a question up that has an interactive part to it, students can either type some text or drag a little dot or type in a number or browse a website. It basically gives them lots of interactive components. And at first, to me, I first looked at this and I thought, boy, this looks like something that's probably pretty complicated. It's really not. In fact, if you just go to peardeck.com, if you're not familiar with it, they'll walk you right through all of the steps, which is pretty good. So with that in mind, let's keep moving. Number one, this is what we're going to be talking about during our webinar today. Number one is we're going to demonstrate what Pear Deck Student-Paced Mode is. So let's get at it and let's figure out what this is all about. So I just was telling you earlier that a Pear Deck presentation basically will let you take your slides and put them out to all of your students. And see, usually when you're in the classroom, usually whenever you're face-to-face doing Pear Deck, the students all have their devices. They're maybe sitting on their desks, and all of those slides go out to your students in real time. Now, this is the beauty and the brilliance of Pear Deck Student-Paced Mode, is because whenever you set it up to run student-paced, students don't have to all be on the same slide all at once. They can advance through and do all of the interactive features kind of on their own. And so kind of like the graphic shows here, the teacher is running the Pear Deck, set up the Pear Deck to run in student-paced mode. And then as the students access it, they can all be at different points. So this one's kind of at the very beginning of it. This one's about halfway through. This one's almost done. This one's about halfway through too. And as long as you set it up so that everybody can access it, they're able to go through and kind of progress through it on their own. So as you can imagine, during remote learning, this is super, super helpful, because it means that students can jump in just whenever they're ready. They can advance through your slides. It's so much better than just giving them a slide deck and saying, okay, go read this, because there's actually interactive elements in it. Plus, you can also gather information from them, and you can kind of see where they are, and you can also let them participate in the conversation, basically. So pretty good stuff. I want to show you what it looks like when you're running Pear Deck. So there's a variety of ways to turn Deck Student-Paced Mode on. Now, if you're using PowerPoint, Pear Deck runs as an add-in on PowerPoint. So all you've got to do is just set up that add-in, and you can see over there on the right, when that add-in is running, you hit the Present with Pear Deck button. Now, if you don't use PowerPoint and use Google Slides, it looks very similar. This is one of the oddities of Google Slides and PowerPoint. Did you notice that with Google Slides, it's called an add-on? With PowerPoint, it's called an add-in. These are like the little nuances that you get from using both of them. But once you get it going, once you start that presentation, down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, if you're running it as a teacher, you hit those little 3 dots, which is the menu button, and then you hit Turn on Student Paced. And so once you hit Turn on Student Paced, then that's going to let your students be able to join the Pear Deck presentation and run through it whenever they want. Now, the easiest way for students to do that, at least in my experience, has been to just send them to the link joinpd.com. And then you can see up here in the top right, there's a little code. And so you can just have them enter that code in, and that will totally work. There's other ways to do it. That's just been the easiest way that I've found to make it happen. Sometimes whenever you set it up, you see one of these screens, and if it's the difference between instructor-paced and student-paced, of course, this is the one you want to pick. Instructor-paced, like it says here, is if you're connecting with students in real time. Now, doing an instructor-paced one, this is the one where you're clicking through it and everybody's doing it at the same time. This is possible in remote learning. What you could do is you could set up a video call, have all of your students in on the video call, and you could run through it on that video call. But I think that is a topic for another webinar, since we're going to focus mainly on student-paced. So if you ever see this screen, you just click on student-paced and you're in good shape. Now, here's the beauty of being able to run student-paced, is that you're able to monitor student progress. Now, what you're seeing right now, this is part of the teacher dashboard. Now, I will tell you that the teacher dashboard is a premium feature of Pear Deck. This is the one where you sign up for the premium features, which are usually paid, and you're able to get stuff like this, including the teacher dashboard. Now, I'm going to show you at the end of this presentation. See, here's another teaser for you to hang around till the very end. I'm going to show you a link that will let you have access to this for the rest of the school year while you're on remote learning. So just hang on for that, because I'm gonna hook you up. But what's neat about it is that there's a variety of things that you can see in this teacher dashboard, and one of them is this: so you've got this little icon that shows you the students that are actively on this slide at that time. And so you click on that and it shows you the names, and then it'll even display the names of the students and what their responses are, so that you can really get sort of a big picture of how the entire class is doing all at once. Here's another one that's pretty cool too, is that you can use this part to see, you see the little green bar down at the bottom. This will show you how many students have completed the slide. And so you're able to kind of keep track in that way too. So this is really a nice feature. While students are working on this, let's say that you set it up in the morning and they have to finish it by the end of the day. Or you set it up on Tuesday and they have to finish it by the end of the day, Wednesday. You can pop into this anytime. You can even close your web browser because it continues to run even when your web browser isn't up. So students continually keep working through this, and then you can pop in at any time to see their progress. Now, when it's time to be done, probably the easiest way to end it is to load up that Pear Deck session, which you can find at peardeck.com in your account. And then you just hit this Stop Student Paced button. And so when you hit the Stop Student Paced button, that just, basically freezes the student paced features of the activity. And then the second step to wrap it all up is to end your session. So let me do those two steps one more time. Whenever you're done, you hit Stop Student Paced, and then you end your session. And again, remember, you can go back to these slides later on if you need to. And so that's kind of the whole student-paced process in a nutshell. Is at the beginning, you set up your slides, you add the interactive features with the Pear Deck add-on or the add-in, and then you launch your session, have your students join it, and you make sure that student-paced mode is on, and then your students are doing the activities, doing the activities, doing the activities. Whenever they're done, you hit Stop Student Paced, and then you end your session. And then you're all done. And what's neat is that you can go back into your Pear Deck account, which you can find at peardeck.com, and you can go back through all of your students' responses. You can go back and you can see what their responses were. There's all sorts of data in there that you can check out. So this is a really nice way to be able to keep tabs on what your students are doing throughout the day, see how their progress is, see what kind of questions they have, and all of that. Now, as you're designing your Pear Deck slides, these are the kinds of questions that you can add to your slides. You've got your text questions, where your students respond with a text answer. So they're just going to respond by typing it in, and you're going to get to see all of the answers in one place. You've got the multiple choice, where you give them, 2 or 3 or 4 multiple choice answers, and then they're going to click on the one that they think is the right answer or the one that they think applies to them. You've got the number questions, where their answer is a number. The website questions are really cool because they're not even really questions. What they do is they display an active website up on the slide that students can scroll up and down through and interact with. And so this is really nice. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but being able to display an active website right there so that students don't have to jump out of the Pear Deck presentation, that can be really helpful in a number of ways. Of course, you've also got the drawing questions and the draggable questions. The drawing questions are where the student draws something on the screen. Now, this can also be really helpful if you put a background up there, something like a map or an unfinished picture or a bunch of words that you want them to connect together, and then they basically draw to answer. And then the draggable puts like a little dot up on the screen, and then you're supposed to drag it into the spot where you think it's supposed to go. Now, you see the little stars next to those. Those are premium question types. Now, like I was saying earlier, these are premium features, and the teacher dashboard is a premium feature. But as I said earlier, another incentive to be able to hang around till the very end, I'm going to have a way for you to be able to get access to all of those premium features through the rest of the school year so you can finish remote learning with those. So that kind of wraps up the general idea of student-paced. And so if you've got any questions on that, I know I've been seeing, I kind of closed down the chat and the Q&A so that I could focus on the slides and everything, but I see the numbers and I see that there's some stuff up there. So we're going to tackle those questions that you may have about it in a moment. But for right now, we're going to go on to the second part. Remember, the first part was going to be demonstrate how student-paced works. This is the good stuff right here. This is discuss how you can use it for remote learning. And so what we're going to do here, and again, like I said earlier, I would love to have your help on all of this. You know what, actually, yeah, okay. So I just got the chat back up so that I could see what's going on. And I see that we do have some questions. And I know Danielle is watching this in the wings, and she is pulling out some of the, she's pulling out some of the questions so that we can answer those at the end. We'll make sure that we have time for that. So I've got my chat open here, and I would love to see, as we go through this, your suggestions for how student-paced mode could be used in remote learning. You know, like some specific uses, ways you've used it in your class, uses for different subjects and different grade levels and everything. So we had the question types up here earlier. And so I thought I'd put these up here again to tell you about some different ways that you could potentially use these question types. So, here's a few of them. Let's start with the text questions. So these are the ones where you ask students to type in some text, and then you're able to see all of your student responses. And so, of course, I think sometimes people look at this and they think, okay, I'm going to ask a question, a fact-based question, and see if the students know the answer to it. And you can certainly do that for these types of questions, but there's a lot more that you can do with it. And I found that the basic fact recall, it's like that's kind of the lower level use of something like Pear Deck. And so we could do even more than that. For instance, we could survey students and ask them, you know, what do they think about what they've just read or just studied? What do they think about the logic behind it? What are the questions that they still have? Brain dumps are really good too. Brain dumps are where you basically just say, recall everything that you can remember about a certain topic. And there's lots of cognitive science research that tells us that this is a very brain-friendly way to encode things deeply into our long-term memory. Then, of course, it gives us the opportunity to predict what's next. If you give them a scenario and then you just ask them a text question, what do you think happens next? What do you think should happen next? And then have students drop some of those in there. That's all really good stuff too. For the multiple choice, again, we can do, let's have 4 possible answers and see if you know the right answer. But we could also use these for opinion polls. For feelings check-ins, you know, just at the beginning of a presentation, how are you feeling? And you don't necessarily have to display everybody's answers to everyone, but just to kind of get a pulse of how your students are doing on that particular day. And then instead of asking which one is the right answer, maybe you could say which one is the best fit or which one is the best for you. And then you could even follow it up with a text question later and have them justify their response, which is really good. Let me pop into the chat real quick and see a couple of these. You know, Dana Byram says we've utilized it in 3rd grade to help make RTA practice and test prep so much more fun and interactive. They have a hard copy of the text that they use to find the answers, and then they answer the question on the screen. Then they're able to discuss why people chose certain answers. And see, I think that's a huge part of it too, is being able to follow up with those rationales for why they picked certain things. Judy says drawing slides are awesome for math class. They can show their work and make graphs. Yes, absolutely. We're going to touch on drawing slides just a little bit more here in a second. Jamie says some of the K2 teachers in my district are using Pear Deck for review and even assessment. They're great K-2 littles templates that you can get started. And yes, Pear Deck does have in the add-on or the add-in off to the side, they have lots of templates, like pre-created templates that you can just drag right in and use. So I'm seeing those are just a couple of the things that are popping into the chat. Cindy says timelines and history. All of this is good stuff. So definitely keep these coming. Oh, I saw one more that I have to touch on right now. This is from Denise. She says, I use the SEL slide. SEL, she means social emotional learning, you know, kind of like checking in on their social and emotional well-being. She says, I use the SEL slide every class period and as a student check-in. I use the one with the 1 to 10 scale, and I follow up with students as needed. Students appreciate this and knowing that someone cares. See, this is the example right here. This is another example of how you can go beyond just asking those fact-based questions. Do you know the right answer or not? And this can really, really make a difference. Let's keep going. All right, so we talked about text and choice questions. Let's talk about number questions. I really need to lean on all of you that are here for the webinar on this one, because I haven't used number questions very much. I mean, see, I brainstormed and I could only come up with 2 of them, like answers to math questions and year answers. You know, if you want to know what something happened in a certain year, what is it? And you type it in as a number. I really haven't used this one very much, so I'd really like to pull in some of the things that you all have to share. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat when it comes to that. But the website, this is so cool. So imagine you're a student and you're flipping through these slides on your device, and all of a sudden a slide comes up that has kind of like an embedded website, just a web page. And so instead of having to jump off of your slide presentation to go to this web page, it's just right there on your screen for you. So I think a real simple and easy way to use that is to display an article. If you have an article that you want students to read, just provide a link to that when you're creating the slide, and it's going to display it for the students so that they can scroll up and down and they don't even have to jump out. And then of course you can follow that up later with some of those kinds of questions we talked about earlier. You know, asking students their opinion in a text question, or asking them which one is a best fit, or a prediction in a choice question. I've seen some really neat ways where teachers have used another app or another website within Pear Deck. For instance, there are ways that you can display Google Maps and Google Maps Street View so you can see what it looks like down on the street. I think I've seen people use Flipgrid before, where students are able to record a video response. And so again, whenever we get into, or I'm curious to see in the chat if you've connected other apps and other programs in these website slides. And then of course you can also do something as simple as type in a document. So imagine this. What if you're using something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word Online through Microsoft 365? You create an online document and you change your sharing settings so that it's anyone with a link can edit. And so you basically just create a big classroom-wide document where they can brainstorm and throw ideas all into the same document. That's something that you could definitely do within the website type question too. Blake says Edpuzzle is a great one to add with the website questions. Yes, if you're not familiar with Edpuzzle, that's the one where you can take a video, and Edpuzzle lets you drop little questions in the middle of the video, like it pauses the video and asks students a question. So if you want to take that activity and stick it within one of these big Pear Deck presentations, that could totally work. Jessica says we use the website to look at a virtual tour of Ellis Island. That's another thing you could do with Google Maps Street View. That would be really, really good. So Mike, oh my goodness, there's Mike Muhammad. There's a good Pear Deck user right there. I know all of you are, but he's at least one that I know of personally. He says a document shared with the class and all students annotate a text. Yeah, definitely. That would totally work. Jenna says Flipgrid is also an awesome link on a website slide. Yes, totally. Padlet would be good for that too. Padlet, that's from Tara Potter. She suggested that one. Padlet is one that's kind of like, it's almost like a bulletin board, and students are able to stick little multimedia sticky notes onto the bulletin board. So lots and lots of stuff that you can do with this. So fantastic responses. You guys are really coming through with all of these. Let's go to the last group here. These are the fun ones, I think. These are the drawing questions. How could you use these within a student-paced mode? See, with the drawing question, you could certainly use it to just like draw a like a little smiley face, or you could use it to write out a math problem or something. I think the best ways to use the drawing questions, whether it's in student-paced mode or in traditional instructor mode, is to put some sort of image in the background. For instance, let's say a map. If you wanted to highlight all of the, some of the world capitals, you put a map of the world in there. Or you put in a map and you ask students to draw in where certain rivers are. So mapping, that totally works. Completing a picture, if you have a half completed picture and you want students to be able to finish it, that could work. And then of course there's visual thinking too. If you do some sort of brain dump where you have students write out words and draw little doodles or draw little stick figures or whatever, this could totally work too. And there's lots of brain research behind the power of using text and images together, so that's good. And then the draggable questions. These are the ones where you put a little draggable dot, and wherever you leave the dot is where you answer. And so a simple and easy one is a Likert scale, on a scale of 1 to 10. This is like the SEL question that someone mentioned earlier. And what's nice is that Pear Deck has lots of ready-made templates that you can just put right into your slide presentation, and you don't even have to really think about it. You can just pull in one of their templates, and there's several of them that are like that. Of course, you can adjust the text in it too if you want. Identifying parts. So it's like saying, drag it to where the liver is, drag it to where the kidneys are. And then estimating too. I always like to think of, this is like another mapping thing. It doesn't even have to be a mapping thing. It could be lots of things. Like, where do you think the highest point in the state is? And you just give them a map of the state, and then they drag the dot to where they think the highest point is. So again, more good stuff here. Mike says drawing slides work great if you want students to complete a table. For example, in math, like an XY table for a function. Yes, definitely. Debbie says, I've used the drawing feature to show how forces act on an image or energy flow of a food web. Interesting. Forces and energy flow. I like that. Ms. Morris says you can have kids draw how they get from their house to some other place like school. This is great. This might be good for understanding discrete steps in coding. I didn't even think about that. That's great. Or for descriptive writing in English class. Chris says use drawing to label the parts of a neuron, label the parts of a heart. Yes, absolutely. These are really, really good. Laura says, I really like the draggable dots and symbols for labeling verbs and subjects, etc. in a sentence. And then Lisa says, in my biology class, I could use the drawing questions for them to draw Punnett squares for genetic problem. Yes, absolutely. That's so much easier than trying to talk about Punnett squares in a text, like in a text type thing. So yeah, there's lots of possibilities with this. This is good. Man, you all have the best stuff. You have the best suggestions. Okay, so a couple of quick things. This is one of the things that I love the most about Pear Deck. This is the reason that I really believe in it, whether you are face-to-face with students or if you are working with them in remote learning. I really think this is Pear Deck's superpower. Don't design for what the teacher says, design for what the student does. Because if you think about the way that we use slide presentations as teachers, think about how we design those slides a lot of times. We design those slides and we put our bullet points up there and we put lots of text up there. I know you guys probably don't do that, but sometimes people do, right? And they put that text up there. We've certainly sat through meetings where people have done this. And what are those bullet points there for, and what is that text there for? You could say it's for the students so they can read it, but let's be real, okay? It's for the person talking. It's their speaking notes. And so in that case, they have designed the slide for what the teacher says. This is the thing I love about what Pear Deck does, is it allows you to design for what the student does. Think back to some of the examples that we were giving earlier. Drawing something out on a map. That's not about what the teacher's doing, that's about what the student's doing. Dragging a dot to the different parts of speech. Again, that's not what the teacher's saying, it's what the student is doing. It's a whole paradigm shift on how we use slides. And of course, whenever we do this, it becomes very hands-on, interactive, student-centered. So when you start to think about slides differently like that, I think that is really huge. And then here's the other thing. I think this is the best use of student-paced mode. We were talking about how you can use it And you can use it for this. You can use it to do recall-based questions. You know, can the student remember the capital of Georgia? Can the student remember the parts of the water cycle? Can you remember this? Can you remember that? Yeah. That's like recall level. That's kind of like depth of knowledge level 1, like pretty kind of superficial. I think the best use of student-paced mode is to walk students through a line of thinking. You give them a little bit of information, and then you give them a spot where you say, what do you think about this? What do you think is going to happen next? Can you figure this out? And you start to kind of walk them through step by step and give them the opportunity. It's almost like a really well-designed graphic organizer. You know, you think of something like a graphic organizer, you know, something like, let's go with a Freyer model. You know, the Freyer model is the one where you get a topic and you're trying to think of the characteristics of it, some examples of it, some non-examples of it, and something else I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, we're not asking students to regurgitate facts. We're giving them a line of thinking. And so if we can walk students through a line of thinking, that makes them better thinkers and better problem solvers, I think. All right. Kyle Klein. Oh, there's another fellow Hoosier in the house. This is great. Kyle Klein says, sounds like this would be great to incorporate with HyperDocs. There are a lot of similarities between HyperDocs and this. If you're not familiar with what HyperDocs are, I'm going to type hyperdocs.co into the chat. That's the link where you can find out all about what HyperDocs are. They're kind of like these self-paced, this is probably why Kyle said it. They're like these self-paced activities that lead students through a line of thinking. So good stuff here. So we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've talked about how we can use to do student-paced mode. We've talked about how it can be used in a classroom, some examples and some ideas and all of that. And so now I think it's time for some questions. And again, I know I've seen lots of questions. I mean, you all see the chat too, right? I mean, it is off the hook. There are lots of things in there. And so for me trying to talk and present and keep an eye on that, there was no way I was going to get to all of those. So I'm going to go out on faith here that Danielle is still listening and that she can pop in and give us some of the questions that have been collected.
I am with you, Matt, and thank you to everyone for your patience in the chat a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that, and then I just turned the chat off and focused on talking to you all. So
our apologies. Thank you all for your patience again. So sorry, Matt.
That's okay. That's kind of part of the reality that we live in these days, right? We're just trying to make through as best as we can.
Exactly. Now you're modeling the right behavior there. So
there you go.
One of the questions, actually, if you wouldn't mind just resharing the link that you shared at the beginning for some of those sources.
Yep. I will bring that right back up.
Perfect.
There it is. The slides are at ditchthattextbook.com/student-paced. And then Danielle, can I show them the other slides, the other couple that we had at the beginning again real quick?
Absolutely. Please go for it.
All right, cool. So this was the other one I shared with you. These are the 3 free ebooks with lots of templates and ideas for you to use in your remote learning class at ditchthattextbook.com/101. That will also get you signed up for my weekly emails with lots of tips and ideas. And then we've got the live tweet giveaway too. So those are the things that you want to tag at @JMattMiller, at Pear Deck, #ditchbook to be able to win the books. Okay, so there's that, Danielle.
Perfect. And then we're getting a lot of questions about student-paced mode and keeping it open and keeping it live. So the nice thing about that is that you start it up. Let me flip through my slides just a little bit here. You start it up by presenting it just like you would with, and Danielle, correct me on this if we need to, but you can start it up just like you would with students face-to-face, and then you turn on student-paced mode, and once it's on, it's on. And so you can have students join just the same way that they would normally. Usually it suggests to go to joinpd.com and they can enter this code. There's also a way to get a link too, right, Danielle? Exactly. Yep, you're correct. Yeah, so you're able to get a link that will take them right into it. And so what's nice is while student-paced mode is on, like I was saying earlier, you can close your web browser, you can turn Pear Deck off, you can go to bed and go to sleep and shut your device down and wake up the next morning and it's still running. And so what you do there is you go back in, again, Danielle, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can go into your Pear Deck account. So just go to peardeck.com and find that session that's running that has the student-paced mode on it, and then just bring it up and then turn student-paced mode off. And then you can end the session. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. And we actually just made a product update last week. So now when you click present lesson, you actually get that option right away. You can click student paced or instructor led. So
yes, absolutely.
I
see in the chat real quick, Scott Marsden, a Californian that I've bumped into a couple times recently. He said, wouldn't you just want to put the link in Google Classroom and have students join that way? Yep, you can totally do it that way too. Kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another. If you've got Google Classroom or any other learning management system, that would totally work.
And Matt, we're getting a few questions about the dashboard. I'm wondering if you can do a little bit deeper of a dive there and kind of show everyone about that real time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Daniel, feel free to throw in any other things that that I leave out. But here are some of the examples. I just got a couple of screenshots in my slides about this. But the dashboard, again, that's the place where you as the teacher can see what's going on. And there are links to the dashboard kind of all over Pear Deck. If you've got a Pear Deck session running, there's a link or there's a button that you can push. If you've got your Pear Deck account up at peardeck.com, there's a button where you can launch into the teacher dashboard. And when you're there, you're able to see the slides, you're able to see your students' responses. You can see who's on the slide real time. You can see how many of them have responded to it. You can even get data on all of the responses that students have given. What else? What are some other things in the dashboard that I'm leaving out, Danielle?
So we're getting a few questions about where you can find those responses after the fact. So we have a couple of different ways to do it. One is you can export those responses to Google Slides. And the second way is that that's all going to be in your Pear Deck home. So you're able to see all of your session responses right there.
Good.
And then, Matt, I don't know if we touched on takeaways yet. That might be another good area.
Takeaways. Yeah, you may have to. I haven't done very much with this. Danielle, you may need to take that one if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. So once you end your session as a Pear Deck Premium, you can click send student takeaways. So after that, each student is actually going to get a copy of your presentation along with just their individual responses. And the nice part of that is that those are all actually live Google Docs. You can go back in later and comment and sort of continue the conversation with the student after the fact.
Yeah, that's good. I'm seeing Caroline says student takeaways are the best way to provide feedback to students. And then she dropped a help link in there. So that's one thing that I haven't played with very much. So, and then I'm also seeing Jamie ask, can the student takeaways go back into Google Classroom? If they're put into a Google file like that, then, you know, it's easy to take that file and hit the share button and then share that with students within Google Classroom if we need to, right?
Exactly. Those are live links right there.
Right, exactly.
And I know we're getting a lot of questions about embedding different tools. I'm wondering maybe you can list a few of your favorites that you like sort of app smashing with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a handful of them, and that's the neat thing. And basically what you can do is you get a link to a specific, you basically get a link from some of these other websites, these other web tools that are out there on the internet. And if you put that link in there, then you're able to send students to that web tool within that website slide. So I know for me, Google tools, or if you use Microsoft, this would be Office 365 tools like PowerPoint or Word.
If you make a collaborative document or a collaborative slide presentation where everybody can jump in, that's a really, really cool experience. I know I've used it with Google Slides. And again, PowerPoint Online, this works too, where each student gets a slide. So let's say you've got 30 students. You can create 30 slides in the slide presentation. You take that slide presentation and hit the share button, and you get a link for anyone with the link can edit. And so you drop that into a website slide. And so when students show up, they basically just scroll down to where one of the slides is empty. They click on it, they put their name into it, and then they do whatever the task is for them to do. And so what's neat about that is they have their own little slide, but it also means, you know, they do their work on their one slide, but then they can also go and check out what everybody else has done too. So really putting those collaborative documents and slides is really good. I think the Pear Deck app smashes, or Pear Deck, this is Pear Deck. What am I talking about? I'm losing my words. Let me start that again. Flipgrid. That's the one I was trying to say. I think the Flipgrid app smash is really, really good. This is where you go to Flipgrid. If you're not familiar with Flipgrid, it's a video response tool. You as the teacher create a, you know, kind of like a prompt or a topic, and then students respond with short video clips. So imagine you're doing your Pear Deck presentation, students are flipping through the slides, and then all of a sudden, here's a Flipgrid topic. And it asks them a question, and there's the big green plus where they click on the big green plus and they're able to record their video response and then go see everybody else's video response. And so being able to just stop like that and reflect and answer in video and then see each other's responses is a pretty cool feature to be able to add in on just one little slide. So those are some of my personal favorites.
I love those. Okay, I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to ask a couple more of our top ones, and then what we can do is answer the rest of them in our follow-up email. So one more, it looks like Tara's asking about our immersive reader integration. And Matt, I don't know if you've seen too much of this one yet.
I haven't seen very much of it, but I've heard that it has happened. And oh my goodness, immersive reader is a game changer, especially for your students that struggle with reading. So I would love to hear a little more about that too.
Absolutely. So our immersive reader integration works both in our Google Slides and our PowerPoint Online solutions. And what we can do is, I think Caroline will be able to post a link right in the chat with a little bit more about that. But for those that are not familiar, it is an excellent tool to use, not only just for students that struggle with screen reading, but there are also audio features embedded in there and translation for, I don't want to botch it, for the number of languages, but it is an extraordinary amount.
I think I just heard Mike from Microsoft saying that it was between 60 and 80 at this point. So I'll go out on a limb and guess that it's that many.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yep. Gina's in there saying it's about 80 languages, which is wonderful.
Yes.
So I'm just going to give you one more. It looks like Kyle is asking, how would you set up student-paced if you have multiple classes during the day?
Oh, if you have multiple classes during the day, well, I think it kind of depends on how you want to aggregate your data together. If you want all of those student responses all in one place, I would create one Pear Deck presentation. I would start the student-paced mode and I would deliver it to all of those classes. So for me, when I was teaching high school Spanish, I would have like 3 sections of Spanish 1. So if I had the same activity that I wanted all of my Spanish 1 classes to do, and I wanted to pull all of their responses all together in one place, I could just do it in one Pear Deck presentation and assign it to all 3. Now, if I want to keep them separated, what I could do is I could always create one slide deck for one class and then do the assignment to that one class so that they get a code. And then I could assign it to the other class with a different code and assign it to another class with a different code. And that way it can keep all of your data sort of separated. Anyway, that's sort of how it makes sense in my mind. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe what we can end with is if you want to go back to that tweet prompt one more time, just to make sure that everyone's able to take advantage of that book.
Yeah, I'll go back down through it. Oh,
can I share this link? It's on the screen already. I guess I have to ask for
Absolutely.
forgiveness instead of permission at this point. But this was the teaser that I kept throwing out. If you like these ideas of using the premium version of Pear Deck, this is where you can get the draggable questions, the drawing questions, and the teacher dashboard where you can watch all of your student progress. Those are premium features, but guess what? If you use this link right here, and yes, you can write it down. Yes, you can screenshot it. Yes, you can send it to a friend. You can tweet it if you want to. You do whatever you want with it. This gives you 3 months of Pear Deck Premium access for free. So that should hopefully, I mean, if this is April, that should hopefully get you to the end of the school year. So definitely go do that. And the other nice thing about this is it never asks you for a credit card. Just whenever your 3 months lapses, you just go back to the free plan. And B, anything that you create during this premium access, you get to keep. So this isn't one of those things where they're trying to, auto bill you after 3 months or anything. This is just really honest to goodness, a gift that Pear Deck lets us give away. So there's that link right there. And Danielle, I'll bet you can probably include that link or a similar one in the email, right?
Absolutely. We'll have all of that information in our email, and that will be going out on Monday for everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and so then again, there's the live tweet giveaway right there. If you tweet something that you learned from this session, make sure you tag me, tag Pear Deck, and include the Ditch Book hashtag. When I say tag me, that just basically means put my username and Pear Deck's username and the Ditch Book hashtag in your tweet somewhere. If you've got a picture, you can click on it and tag, but that's probably the easiest way to do it. And then, yeah, we're going to be pulling 10 people from random from the ones that do that. And we're going to be sending, when I say we, it's really going to be Pear Deck doing it. We're going to send out copies of this book. So let's see. I think someone asked earlier about this right here. If you're doing the link, they said, is that a capital O or capital Q? That's a Q. 2 capital L, lowercase R-O, capital Q, S-Z. Yeah, that's a Q right there. Good question. And then there's that one more time if you want to get those free ebooks and get my emails with helpful tips to help you with remote learning or traditional face-to-face learning. ditchthattextbook.com/101 should do it for you. So I think that about covers it. Anything else from you, Danielle?
I think that's it. Thank you again, Matt, and thank you to everyone for joining us and everything that you're doing to help support your students during this time. I know it's very, very crazy, and we really appreciate each one of you educators. And you, of course, Matt, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And yeah, I want to just echo that real quick and say that I know all of us are working probably harder and trying more new things and are struggling through new stuff more than we have in a long time. And I just want you to know someone sees you, someone appreciates you, someone knows that you are working hard for those kids. And so please keep it up because they really, really do need it. We really all need it. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing. So please do keep up the good work. And thanks again so much for letting me join you on this webinar.
Thanks, Matt. Have a great weekend, everyone.